Yeah, the poll will come on anytime.
Good afternoon, good morning to all of you joining us in person here in Dubai, but also to those joining through live stream from all around the world. We are delighted to be here at the Global Decarbonization Acceleration Pavilion and welcome you to this conversation about hydrogen thanks to the COP28 presidency team at the Atlantic Council. My name is Ivana Jemelkova. I'm a senior managing director with FTI Consulting. We are a global business advisory firm and have been in hydrogen for over 10 years. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome an all-star panel. I vividly remember my first COP, to which I went to talk about hydrogen. It was the number 23. Some of you might remember it. It was in Bonn. They promised us to go to Indonesia, and we ended up in Bonn. That was a fascinating one, because there definitely was not a lot of knowledge, understanding, and awareness as it relates to clean hydrogen technologies. So fast forward to 28, which is literally just 5 COPs later, and I think we are tracking over 100 sessions that have something to do with hydrogen, which is just incredible. So the speed with which the hydrogen conversation has taken off is really unprecedented. So with that, I have an all-star panel of leaders, policymakers, entrepreneurs, visionaries who have absolutely helped accelerate this momentum and set this new vision. So delighted to welcome Jeff Marutian from the Department of Energy, Arshad Marsu from the Electric Power Research Institute, Dimitrios from Emirates Steel, and Marco Alvera from TESS Hydrogen. I will not do long introductions. I will actually let the gentlemen introduce themselves, and perhaps I'll start at the very, very end. And Marco, to those in hydrogen, is obviously well known as a leader, entrepreneur, originally with the telecoms industry, but certainly in the molecules system now. So Marco, for a little bit of a situational awareness, if you could just tell us a bit more about your organization and where in the hydrogen space are you playing?
Okay, well, thanks for the introduction. You already did the work. So I was briefly in telecoms. I actually lived through the dot-com crash. And so I think a lot of what's happening to hydrogen is very similar. And the dot-com crash with some stocks that are falling, the hydrogen, it doesn't mean the Googles won't be out there. So I think that's my analogy in my own personal experience. Some people invested a little too much, a little too early. It's going to ramp up exponentially, but it's going to take some time. After telecoms, I was very lucky to spend 22 years in NL, working on electrons, then in Eni, working on oil and gas upstream and trading, and then as the CEO of Snam, that is Europe's largest natural gas company. And I became kind of obsessed about hydrogen right around the Bonn COP. And the fact that there's 100 hydrogen panels here also says how many panels there are in the new kind of COPs that look more like Davos than the old school COPs. But anyway, I will tell you hopefully today in more detail why I'm so excited about ENG. A lot of you, maybe it's the first time you hear about ENG. ENG stands for electric natural gas. And so we turn hydrogen into natural gas, synthetic methane they call it in Japan. Japan's the world's biggest LNG market. They want to get to 90%, 90, ENG by 2050. And I think the world is going to move gradually from fossil fuels to e-fuels as well as biofuels. But of the e-fuels, ENG is the one that excites me the most because it's the cheapest to make, the easiest to use, the most versatile. We can use it for heavy transport, for hard to abate sectors, and we'll tell you more about it. So TESS, I left Snam as a CEO to really put a lot of my reputation, savings, career into this idea of rather than asking everyone to change everything to accept hydrogen, we change hydrogen into something that people can use, accept, scale, bank, buy, transport, store, trade, burn, et cetera, immediately. So that's, I think, a great way to start this session about breaking the chicken and egg problem.
Love that. We'll definitely get to that topic. And Marco, I had the chance to visit a TESS showroom in Wilhelmshaven in the north of Germany. And I can attest to the ambition and the vision there. So very excited to hear more about that. You alluded to the systemic nature of what we're talking about, right? It's not just a molecule that will be used in isolation, but with hydrogen, we have the ability to deploy it in many different ways. So I will actually go a little bit against the flow here, and I wanted to go to Arshad next, because you have very much that systemic perspective. I mean, EPRI, for those who may not be familiar, Electric Power Research Institute, is a true powerhouse when it comes to data and research. And I think I read on your website that you represent, or your membership represents, over 90% of all electricity produced and delivered in the United States. So you do know a lot about electrons, but I know that you're not shying away from the molecule side of the conversation either. So Arshad, tell us a bit more about EPRI's view of hydrogen and where you're playing in that space.
Thank you. And this is an all-star moderator. That's why it's a great panel. So we shape the future of clean energy working with more than 400 energy companies in 40 countries. Primarily electricity companies, people who make, move, and use electrons. So yes, US is our base. Yes, US is where more than 80% of the electrons membership is with EPRI, but it's increasingly global. And there is a strong realization that clean electrons will have to create clean molecules, and those clean molecules have to be transported and used for us to do economy-wide decarbonization. So that led us to get engaged heavily into our low carbon resource initiative, where we are actually looking into this basic principles of not just how to create, move, and use clean molecules. We know how to do that, but how to de-risk those technologies that we are using today that will have to be deployed 10, 20 years from now at scale. So that de-risking of technologies is where really we play a role.
Perfect. Excellent. So many topics to cover. We'll get to that, but it's an excellent segue to Dimitrios and Emirates Steel, because we have wonderful representation on this panel of pretty much the whole value chain. I'll get to Jeff, while I'm saving the best for last. But with Marco, we have the production side. With Dimitrios, we have the offtake. With Arshad, we have that very informed sort of helicopter view of the situation. So Dimitrios, without putting you on the spot, whenever I moderate an event and I ask, how many of you have molecules to sell? The whole room goes up. Then I ask, how many of you would like to buy green molecules? And you know, there are some hands, but not very many. So why is Emirates Steel looking into hydrogen? I know you have some very ambitious decarbonization sort of objectives, and you've made some exciting announcements. So if you can just give us a glimpse of why Emirates Steel on a hydrogen panel.
Yeah, I mean, partly the reason that I moved into the steel industry is because I have a hydrogen background, and I strongly believe that it's probably one of the first industries that will start off taking clean hydrogen. Actually, our company is already using hydrogen for several years. The selection of the process that we have, it's natural gas DRI based. So effectively, that's what we do. We're using hydrogen. So we know how to operate the assets. We don't have to write them off. We just need to start blending green hydrogen into our existing units. And we made the first step recently by announcing our partnership with Masdar. We are launching green hydrogen, I would call it pilot. So it's relatively small scale, but it's the first tangible step to understand and gain technical knowledge as well as commercial knowledge, understand the value chain, and then scale up to larger scale, which could be, for our existing assets, it could go up to several 100,000 tons of hydrogen. If we include the new projects that we're developing, it's going to be something much more significant than that. And I will talk about some interesting projects we're developing value chain later.
Perfect. That sounds great. And Jeff, as I promised, you have an incredible history in US politics. You were a chief sustainability officer in the Obama White House, then a senior advisor to Secretary Granholm under the Biden administration. And really congratulations to the DOE and to yourself on this incredible momentum for hydrogen that we have seen over the last few years. Extremely exciting. So where are we on that journey? What's coming next? Tell us a bit more about what you're thinking currently.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for that very generous introduction. I won't argue with you. But what I will say is that my name is Jeff Marudian. I do have the incredible honor of representing the Biden-Harris administration here, where I work at the Department of Energy, leading the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. And we like to think of ourselves as the government's clean energy accelerator and innovation hub. My office oversees our energy efficiency standards and oversees a research and development portfolio that includes hydrogen, biofuels, electrification, solar, wind, hydropower, geothermal technologies, and we're of course here to talk about hydrogen. So I'm going to talk about hydrogen going forward. And as you acknowledge, we're in just such an incredibly exciting moment. The Department of Energy has historically had the resources and the capacity to focus on research and development. Our 17 national labs across the US have really driven so many of the innovations that we are able to see being deployed today. We now have the resources because of the new laws that President Biden has championed, that now we have those resources to accelerate the deployment. And so as we do that, we continue to make sizable investments in the R&D that we know is necessary to continue to advance de-risking technologies and bringing them to scale. So happy to talk a little bit more about what those efforts are, but really just excited about the opportunity to be here with all of you, with these distinguished panelists, and to have a great conversation about this.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So let's tackle that chicken or egg problem. And the very smart team at the Atlantic Council know that they will trigger me when they ask this question, because I think it's a completely false perspective. Chicken and egg feels like a linear process, right? You start with either, then get the other one, and then the cycle repeats. And to deploy clean energy at speed and scale, that's not a linear process. We don't have to wait for something to happen to trigger something else. We all need to sort of jump into it, agree on a roadmap, and everyone do our part. I heard someone use a different metaphor. They said it's like synchronized swimming. You sort of put on your suit, you jump into the pool, it looks a little odd at first, but then it slowly takes shape and we all move in the same direction and sort of create that momentum, that forward movement. So I'm curious to hear your perspectives. Should we be talking about it this way? Do we need to reframe the problem? And frankly, where are the key challenges right now on that journey to scale and cost and volume and all of that? Marco, I'll start with you again.
Okay, so I think we have to, just to set the frame, 4 very heroic countries in Europe, Italy, Germany, Spain, the UK, 17 years ago, put 1,000 billion euros in subsidies on solar energy and a bit on wind. So Europe already did the IRA. 17 years later, China has built 6 mega factories to make solar panels very cheaply, and the cost of solar went from about $800 a megawatt hour to 10. That's the world's cheapest solar record here in Dubai with Paddy. So we've kind of cracked that. That works. The cost of hydrogen is simply a function of the cost of power times the cost of the electrolyzer. So the challenge and the opportunity now is to replicate that same thing with electrolyzers. It's not going to go from 800 to 10, but we need it to go from about 1,000 to 200. So much, much easier. And it can be done, and I've been writing about this. I've been visiting most of the electrolyzer manufacturers. And in China, they do it in a kind of top-down way. And so they now have more or less 90% of the pipeline of new projects for electrolyzers. We have to start with the end in mind. So we can either do it the European way with solar. We put massive subsidies. People get really frustrated because of the cost of energy. Interest rates are going up. And then we kind of fingers crossed and see how many years it takes for someone to pick up that demand. Or we start with the end in mind and we actually scale up massively the manufacturing, because with a couple of billion, we can save trillions of dollars of subsidies. We can get a lot more bang for the buck with the IRA and with other stuff that Europe is doing. And let's face it, the world has gotten a lot poorer in the last year since the IRA and since Europe made all these pledges. And I see a lot of climate fatigue everywhere I go. So I'm not sure the analogy of the synchronized swimmer. I mean, I really see, and I'm a free marketeer, but I really see there could be a moment when some government nudges and maybe some coordination between Europe and the US, or UK, Europe and the US, or India, for example, has a huge opportunity to. Adani wants to vertically integrate, make their own solar panels, their own electrolyzers, their own wind turbines. That's the model. That's a Chinese model. It worked. That's the Indian model, apparently, and it will work. So the question is, how do we get electrolyzers to $200 a kilo, because at that point, we can make green hydrogen at $1 a kilo. And at that point, it's cheaper, not only cheaper than oil, but cheaper than coal. And so we've sorted out basically most of the problems with the energy transition. So what we're doing, our effort, our contribution is to build ENG. Let me just talk about a very concrete recent project we announced in Canada. Hydro-Quebec gives us the hydropower. We take biogenic CO2 from the pulp and paper industry. We produce synthetic renewable methane, 100% carbon neutral. We sell it to a Canadian utility that wants to decarbonize and decarbonizes without having to change much. We're doing an identical project in South Houston with Total 50-50. We're doing another project in West Texas to sell to the Japanese market. We'd love to sell you, Dimitris, ENG for your steel, because the DRI actually loves the carbon, because it's called carbon steel, so there's some element of that CH4 that gets dropped in. So I'm hugely optimistic. I'm betting, I'm going all in on this. It's not going to happen overnight, but I've already told you we have 4 projects of 500 megawatt. These are real bankable projects that stand alone on their own, and as we build out more, we're doing projects in the Middle East and Australia. You need to take it a bite at a time. But I do think there can be scope and opportunity to get some policy, industrial policy measures that can really front load and reduce that cost of making green hydrogen.
Great reframing of the situation. Dimitrios, you were mentioned, so I'll go back to you. Do you feel like the proverbial chicken or the egg in this conversation? Where does Emirates still fit? And what do we really need to get done for you to be able to use hydrogen and buy some synthetic methane from Marco?
I think the opportunity in steel is it's quite significant, yeah. Purely because it's a sector. I will focus on the automotive steel, that it's used in the automotive industry, that we already seen some signals, and actually more than signals, offtake agreements been signed for a number of projects that they will be producing green hydrogen in the future. The reason is that the specific kind of downstream use of green hydrogen to produce flat steel for the automotive industry, it's only a small part of their cost structure. So it's a good example how this metaphor of chicken and egg have been broken. Aside of that, there are various shifts in the industry. For example, something very relevant to Emirates Steel is very relevant to a project we are developing, is what we've seen as the decoupling of the iron and steel value chain. So traditionally, iron and steel were produced in the same location. This paradigm now is changing. Iron is typically the part of the value chain that you produce. You need more energy and you produce the most CO2 emissions. So this is moving now in areas such as the UAE, where we have lower cost renewable energy to produce green hydrogen, for example. And you produce an intermediate product called HBI. I'm sure you've heard about it. And you ship this to a number of various countries that, in a very competitive way, you don't have any conversion losses. I mean, you have some, but not compared to other hydrogen derivatives. And this product is used to decarbonize, let's say, coal blast furnace players by using this green HBI. We have started developing a project. It's currently in feasibility study, in advanced stages, I would say. We have engaged the full value chain, so we have partners and equity partners from the mining side, as well as the offtake side. And we work closely to decarbonize the full value chain this way.
Thank you, both of you, actually, Marco, for reminding us of the context, and you, Dimitrios, of the particular perspectives that each of the players has, right? You're driven by slightly different things, and you need to converge and figure out how to do business together and be useful and helpful to each other. Now, Arshad, a very different perspective. Where do you see the key challenges? And any commentary on scrambled eggs, omelettes, very welcome.
No, it's not a challenge of chicken or egg. It's actually an opportunity to create a farm of industries that are making, moving, storing, and using hydrogen, clean hydrogen. That farm already exists in only one industry, fertilizer industry. but that farm is using hydrogen, not necessarily clean hydrogen. So we now have to look at the opportunity. What are the farms that will produce it? Is it going to be renewables only? Is it going to be the ISMR that KHNP is talking about, small modular reactor? Is it going to be carbon capture, utilization, and storage? And where are we going to be using these eggs? Is it going to be power sector running hydrogen instead of gas on gas turbine? Is it big trucks? Is it steel manufacturing? So each one of these industries, just like the fertilizer industry, will create a farm. We don't know who the winner or loser would be, but what we know for sure is for this clean energy transition to happen, optionality cannot be optional. You have to look at optionality. In some cases, maybe it's renewable hydrogen. Some cases, it may be nuclear producing hydrogen. Some cases, it's gas turbines running on hydrogen. In some cases, we are using hydrogen caverns to store hydrogen, because today, oil and gas are the largest energy storage media we have in the world. What is going to be the oil and gas equivalent in 2100? That could be hydrogen. So it's an opportunity to create a farm of industries on clean hydrogen.
I'm intrigued. That's a really interesting thought, and it reminds me of 7 little or big farms that the DOE is trying to create in the US, right? For those familiar, the DOE has announced a plan to invest $7 billion into clean hydrogen production hubs in the US, but those, perhaps the name is a little misleading, those should include both the production and the demand and the offtake side, and those little ecosystems that you just described, Arshad. So, Jeff, could you tell us a little bit more about that and what you're hoping this program will achieve and how it will play a role in that chicken and egg situation?
Sure. Well, I really like the way that Arshad framed that. I think for us, going back to Marco's point earlier, our goal is to support reducing the cost of hydrogen. We have launched an energy Earthshot. We've got 8 of them across the Department of Energy. One of them is focused on hydrogen, with the goal of reducing the cost of hydrogen to $1 per kilogram within this decade. Because to the points that have been made earlier, that will give us the opportunity to see a further deployment of clean hydrogen across a number of sectors. And those are the sectors that we know are the hardest to abate. I come from the transportation sector, and there's a number of applications that I know a number of us are quite bullish on when it comes to transportation. And we see applications in a number of places as well. You mentioned the hydrogen hubs, important, a significant investment made possible by the laws that have been passed in the United States, and that is really about creating regional economies, creating the production, creating the offtake, and as important, something that is a core theme of so much of the work that we do in this administration. Those hydrogen hubs give us the opportunity to create jobs, to create economic development across the country, and really create a demand in addition to creating a supply for clean hydrogen. And so in addition to the $7 billion investment we've made in the hubs, we've also committed $1 billion to demand specifically, in addition to $1.5 billion to continue R&D, because that R&D doesn't stop just because we're starting the deployment. In fact, it really accelerates as we're seeing more and more needs to further enhance that research. So there's a lot happening here. I think the comments that have already been made are right on the money. We've got a lot of work to do. I'm not sure where I fit in the analogy and metaphor. There's a lot to think about here. But to the point about the synchronization, this is definitely not linear. And that's what I think makes it really exciting to be working in this space at this time.
Let me test it all a little further. So we've talked about the different ways we could be approaching the problem. The number one action right now, what do we need to do? If you had a magic wand, you could wish for anything. Marco, what needs to happen and who needs to take action as the starting point, the trigger?
As I said, I just really would like people, and I've been saying this already a dozen times in the last 3 days and more. It's really simple, and it's about these electrolyzers. And I don't care if they're alkaline or PEM. They're not going to be solid oxide yet, but either alkaline or PEM or both. The US government has a great track record when it comes to procuring military stuff, right? The procurement process is very thorough. It's well established. I'm close to someone in that industry who actually walked me through what happens. I've put together a memo that I've been sharing with people. Happy to talk to any of you offline to go deeper. But there is so much that governments can do without spending money, because I need to buy electrolyzers like next year. I'm faced with I'm talking to 17 different suppliers. None of them is perfect, but I can tell you they're all subscale. And if you're a manufacturer, you're not going to ramp up a factory until you know exactly that your orders are covered. And if we look at the hydrogen industry, there's 470 gigawatts of announced projects, but none of them are even close to FID. So I talked to my friends in that industry. I was in that industry. I bought companies in that industry. They're not going to take their investment decisions. So there you really have, I don't know if you call it chicken and egg, but you kind of have almost like a deadlock. So as I said, we can either let China get on with it in India, or we can step in, do something unconventional, because it's not normal for markets to operate that way. But this is the one low-hanging fruit that if we don't need people to say, to pick a technology, we just need to get a procurement strategy where there's some effort to get people to either consolidate or merge or join forces or create like purchasing situations. And Europe is, I'm telling Europe the same, I'm telling UK government, this is I think the one thing that can then have a huge snowball effect.
Cascade effect, yeah, exactly right. And I appreciate the creative thinking. Industry is not asking for money. Isn't that nice? Industry is asking for other type of action, which is, which will be refreshing for many. So that's.
The reason I'm not asking for money is because what has worked in renewables, an example, Europe put the 20-20-20 target, right? And we exceeded that. Europe is very good, and Japan is very good, and China is very good, and California is very good, and Canada is very good at putting real targets. So if I have a Canadian utility that has to gradually decarbonize, they have to buy e-fuels. They have no option. So I don't need money. I just need that gradual thing we did in Europe with biofuels, with renewables, that thing that China's doing, that thing that Japan has said by 2030, 1% of all the gas grid in Japan has to be ENG. That's created a market for me overnight of 500,000 tons. So I've solved my offtake. But now I need to deliver it as cheap as possible to make the transition less expensive.
The door is open. You just need that good supply of the equipment that will allow you to produce the product that will be sought after in the market. Very, very, very clear. Dimitrios, on the steel side, what would be your number one wish? What kind of action could really unlock the opportunity for you?
First of all, I want to say that for us, and I guess for most, decarbonization is it's not an option. Yeah, it's something that we need to do. And we as Emirates Steel, we have a target to go to 40% by 2030. Green fuels, whether this is hydrogen or potentially ENG here, we can discuss it later. It's something that we are lucky, based on our process that I explained earlier, to be able to accept relatively easily without writing off our assets. Perhaps with small investments, but we are very well placed to discuss this, and it's all about collaboration, developing concepts and projects together with technology providers, with off-takers, and to make this move. And I strongly believe into taking, let's say, small steps first, moving away from, let's say, studies to doing something tangible. And that's why we really pushed for this small step by starting up this, actually it hasn't started up yet, but it will start in 2024, in the first half, the first production of green steel based on green hydrogen in the UAE.
And get that hands-on sort of experience to build familiarity to, sort of let everyone buy into what is inevitable in a way, but obviously needs to be done at scale. Arshad, I will build on that point that Dimitrios just raised around collaboration, and I'm still thinking about there's some announcement outside, so apologies for those who are witnessing this on live stream. I'm intrigued by the farm picture, right? Because that is exactly that sort of collaborative ecosystem. And we talked about collaboration quite a bit in preparation. So how would all of this happen? How would this come together? I mean, how can EPRI help bring something like this together? And what comes to mind is your fantastic work on the Low Carbon Resource Initiative, where you really bring the worlds of electrons and molecules together in a new way. Again, building that trust, building that familiarity. This is not a competition. This is a toolbox of solutions. So keen to hear.
Well, no, before what it means for EPRI, let me just say what we got to do now. We got to build those farms quickly in different industries. The farms that will produce, move, store, and use hydrogen. We need to fail fast. Some of the farms will not work out. And all the countries need to do what DOE has done. 45V provides a $3 per kilogram incentive. The cost to produce hydrogen from renewables today is $3 to $6. So in some jurisdictions, $3 will make the cost almost $0. That's the type of policy we need so we can build quickly, fail fast, figure out which farms are really needed, and then start going at scale. So that's what the industry needs. What does EPRI need for an organization like EPRI? I think the biggest thing we need to do as we are building these farms is share operational experience, because we will not build it right the first time, second time, third time, fourth time. We'll build it right on the nth time. So get from the first, second, third, fourth build to the nth build, whether it's an alkaline, whether it's a PEM electrolyzer, whether it's mixing hydrogen with natural gas and figuring out how do I use the millions of miles of natural gas pipelines that we have in the world. We got to make sure we are sharing operational experience, whether it's a government organization, whether it's a private company, because if we cannot de-risk those farms, then we will end up just building 5, 10, or 20, not 5,000, 10,000, or 20,000. I think that's what, from an EPRI's perspective, we need, is a collaboration to de-risk tomorrow's technology, but do it today.
Absolutely, perfect. Excellent themes. We haven't even touched on infrastructure previously, right? And that could be a topic for its own panel. The announcements continue. Let's maybe give them a second. I'm glad we're safe. I thought it was some kind of an announcement to evacuate or so, but we can continue. That's good. Jeff, I will turn it around for you, because the DOE, you have done your part to a degree, right? So what expectation do you have for the industry, for the business side of things? What needs to happen next, as it relates to the private sector?
Yeah, well, our secretary, Jennifer Granholm, has 3 favorite words, and they are deploy, deploy, deploy. And right now we are in a unique moment within this industry where we're beginning to see the ability, the capacity, because of the historic investments made by the government. We're able to see those deployments happen. And so our role is to continue to support that while continuing to drive the research and development forward. But also to really take the international collaboration to the next level. And I think, I'm sure many of you heard Vice President Harris's announcements that were made here yesterday. We've got a lot of work that's happening within our Earthshot program to really advance that research and development in a way that supports all of the things that we've been talking about, bringing the cost down, supporting regional economies so that we can create the ecosystems that are necessary for both production and also to create that demand. So we are at a unique moment at the Department of Energy, and we get to be in the center of it to help facilitate and drive it forward, and to make sure that it's done in an equitable way that supports job creation and economic growth as well. And so we've got, one of the things that we talk a lot about that comes from the president directly is a whole of government strategy. That means that it's not just the Department of Energy that is driving the ecosystem forward on hydrogen, but it's really all of the agencies working together to create all of what's necessary in that ecosystem. So that's what we're working toward, and I think it's something that will continue to evolve. The research will continue to evolve. The way that we demonstrate and deploy will continue to evolve as those technologies change. And it's for us, it's about the collaboration with private industry, with folks like my colleagues who are here on this panel, who are making those deployments happen.
So we have the various puzzle pieces in place, if you will. We now need to make them work. The hydrogen hubs obviously have a long and complex journey ahead of them. 45V and other key provisions obviously still need some fine-tuning and actual guidelines, so we know what the rules are, because without them, investment decisions are hard to take. We need to get familiar with the technology. We need to figure out how it works, how we eliminate risks so we can go bigger and bolder. And to your point, Marco, we need the equipment, cheap, now, next year, right? You said you need it next year. So I know some of you have been at COP for a few days. Some of you just arrived last night. What is your key message to this conference, and what do you hope we can actually get done here in Dubai? Marco, you are advocating for your approach with your memo. I see that effective advocacy there, but what do you hope to actually get out of Dubai, out of COP28?
No, look, I think this is gonna be a very important COP, because first, reducing methane leakage, that's such a huge low-hanging fruit. I mean, we're really late in this. We've known about this. I really applaud the EDF and the people who really put this high on the agenda, and I'm really pleased we're actually doing. That's a massive tick. I think the other tick is there's now finally a discussion of moving out of fossil fuels, and I talked to CEOs of NOCs, IOCs, they kind of acknowledge that now. It's the first time, and when you do that and think about that, you're entering the world of e-fuels, because biofuels are just constrained by the availability of biofeedstock. And so when you enter the world of e-fuels, then that's doable, that's achievable, and without too much extra cost. So I think electrification is fantastic, but we're kind of exiting an era where a lot of the discussion here was centered around electrify everything, full stop. And I was really surprised moving from the fossil industry to the fully green industry. I thought I'd have like all the NGOs behind me, and I'm finding some of the toughest discussions are with people saying, hey, hold on, you're trying to do green hydrogen, that's gonna stop electrification. I'm like, I don't care if you put an electric heat pump in a home, you're still going to need the molecules underground somewhere, because in Boston you consume 6 times more energy in the winter than you do in the summer. That's, it doesn't matter if it's an EV, you're still going to need a molecule to create that power somewhere, somehow. So I think this is some people will not like this, but this is a pragmatic COP, and I think there's such huge inertia in our industry. We need really pragmatic approaches that don't envisage changing everything everywhere all at once like that film. We need to do it one step at a time and build those farms.
What you're saying really resonates. I have a 5-year-old at home, and she received a gift. It's a book about energy, clean energy. And the 3 lessons for children how to build a cleaner future are deploy renewables, recycle, and don't waste food. Now, I mean, all of these are wonderful recommendations, but they're nowhere near enough. And I think people are waking up to the fact that, just renewables or just a singular action within the system will not change the system. So what you're saying is that perhaps complex reality that, just electrification will not actually complete the energy transition.
We need it all, and I'll send you
yes.
I also wrote a children's book for the energy transition.
I didn't know that, so I need that one. That's
it.
perhaps a better addition, more nuance and, the fuller picture. Love it. Dimitrios, what's your expectation for COP? What are you hoping to get done here?
I would say one of the key wins for me would be, I would refer to the name of this pavilion, the Global Decarbonization Accelerator, which is relevant to us, and we actually endorsed it as a company. So we're very keen to participate, and it's a very, in my view, noble initiative to bring together all the different fragmented approaches to bring policy makers, government, finance, private sector, and producers and off-takers on the same table in a cross-industry approach to accelerate decarbonization and hopefully get out of this chicken and egg situation faster.
Sounds great. Arshad, what is your wish or expectation for COP?
I think this is a pragmatic COP. So provide the financing that will allow us to build these farms in different areas quickly. Make sure that it is done with equity and environmental justice at the center of our mind. Make sure these farms are being built, but there is independent, objective analysis of what's working, what's not working, so we can de-risk. And then finally, I think I would have used the word deploy, but Secretary Granholm has trademarked those words. So I'm going to say build, build, build. Financing is there. Incentives are coming. Equity and environmental justice is in everybody's, not just mind. We're putting together a framework. Once again, TOE is doing an amazing job to putting teeth into this word that we say that the clean energy transition has to be equitable. Well, what does it mean? So this is a great pragmatic COP that will help us in a way where we can speed up building these farms quickly.
It's intriguing, and again, a topic for a potential follow-up panel. The Economist had a great article, Environmentalism That Builds. You know, this notion that we actually need to put steel in the ground and so on, physically create structures, infrastructures, equipment to actually achieve a cleaner world. Again, a lot of awareness, a lot of education, a lot of collaboration to be done. Jeff, I'll give you the last word here. What is your, and the US government's, no pressure, expectation for COP? What are you personally, from your vantage point, hoping to see and get done in Dubai?
Sure. Well, you know, I think this environment is really all about collaboration. It is something that we know the U.S. government can't do alone, and we like to think about the clean energy transition as being private sector led and government enabled, and I think so much of that really relies on collaboration throughout the industry, throughout academia, throughout our national lab system, and across the international stage. And that's why it's such a great honor for me to be here representing the United States. And really, what my hope is to take away from this experience and from panels like this are just more opportunities for us to work together.
On that note, thank you so much to all of our panelists. Please join me in thanking them for joining us today. What an exciting and rich conversation. I also want to thank again the Atlantic Council and the COP28 presidency team. And please join again tomorrow. The program will continue. Have a good rest of your afternoon.